Right, I guess we can already start, Chino. Uh, Before we officially start, hello to everyone. My name is Butston Chavez. I'm one of the co-founders of Gran Hacienda Wines. So it's a very small and focused wine importation business. And we welcome to you this new campaign of ours called All Things Wine School. Basically, this is an opportunity to gather around, drink of course, and learn all things wine casually and fun. This is a free weekly session every Thursday, 5 p.m. Of course, with our host all throughout those four sessions, our certified wine professional educator, Chica Chalian of Five and a Half Twist. Let us learn about wine from your couch. Before I turn over to Chi and start the class, I'd like to remind you of the next sessions that we have in line. So on May 20th, so today it's obviously Chardonnay two ways. Then next Thursday we'll do Grenache and Garnacha. Then on the 27th, May, we're doing Bordeaux blends naman. And on June 3, Northern Portugal Reds. So just to clarify, once you complete the four sessions, wala namang certificate ton. There's no formal quiz or exam. It's just really for you to gain more knowledge and hopefully drink better. So again, cheers everyone. Thank you. Chi, take it away.
Thank you, but okay, guys. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation. Okay. I know it's very weird to actually have a PowerPoint during a wine tasting, but the truth is there's so much about Chardonnay to know, and I have a tendency to talk too much about wine. People who know me well know that because I love wine, obviously, and so I will try my best to be brief, but I would love for you guys to please turn on your cameras if you don't mind. Please don't be shy because I would love to see your faces. It's always good for the teacher to see people, right? And also, again, please keep yourselves muted. But of course, if during the course of the discussion there is a burning question you need to ask, or you have a story about wine specifically, about Chardonnay, or just about wine in general, please feel free to type it in the chat box. I will try to read them out later, maybe even answer the questions. Don't be shy to turn on your camera. I know you're not shy, Chef Josen. Okay, so I see a lot of familiar faces. So some of you have attended my classes before. Whenever I tell people that getting to know wine or getting to know a grape variety is no different from getting to know a person, people always get excited because I think one common experience among everybody in this room is that we have all either dated people that we're now married to, interviewed prospective employees, or dated somebody that we might want to be our girlfriends or boyfriends. And before you actually say yes, or you say, I don't like this person, or I love this person, you need to understand that person's history. Where is that person from? How did they grow up? What was the environment as they were growing up? And it's the same with wine. And if you look at wine that way, if you look at the study of wine that way, then you will not be intimidated with wine. Because really what it is an agricultural byproduct. We all think it's so fancy, we save it for special occasions, but really, it is fermented grape juice, and you need to start with good fruit. So today, we talk about Chardonnay, and let's try to get to know it a little bit better. Um, Love it or hate it, Chardonnay is one of the most popular grape varieties in the world. It's the most widely planted white grape variety everywhere in the world. There's a reason for that. Later on, I'll tell you why. But just to get to know it a little bit, its parents, right? Chardonnay is the love child of Gouais Blanc and Pinot Noir. If you drink wine, I'm sure you already know Pinot Noir, right? It's that red wine from Burgundy. If you do not know Gouais Blanc, don't feel bad. It's actually an ancient grape variety. We don't really know Gouais Blanc unless we are in wine school. But so Gouais Blanc was brought by the Romans, just like any other grape variety, to France from Croatia. And in France, Gouais Blanc met Pinot Noir, fell in love, and Chardonnay was the love child. Just a trivia, Gouais Blanc is also one of the parents of several other grape varieties. So medyo prolific si Gouais Blanc. It's also the parent of Ferment, which is very, very famous in Hungary for their sweet wine called Tokay. And it's also the parent grape of Colombard, another French white grape variety. If you love wine, you have to thank the religious men, okay? They were the ones. So the very first people to cultivate the grape in Chablis are the monks. So they worked the soil, made sure that they planted it in Chablis. Okay, Chablis is the home of Chardonnay in France. And since then it became the white grape star of Burgundy as well as Champagne. Just a piece of trivia, even if now you can find Chardonnay all over where grapes are grown, it was only in the 1970s actually that Chardonnay was found was planted in commercial vineyards outside of France. When I say commercial vineyards, these are vineyards that would plant grapes to make wine for selling either for local consumption or for export. So, where in the world can you find Chardonnay? The very simple answer to that question is you can find it everywhere. As in, literally, anywhere that you can grow grapes for wine, you can find Chardonnay. But for the purposes of our discussion, I'm going to narrow it down to a short list. And I actually have three maps there, and we're not going to go in depth. But if you know Burgundy and Champagne, you know Chardonnay. A lot of people don't know this, but Chardonnay is one of the main grapes found in Champagne. And if you like your Blanc de Blancs, that's completely 100% Chardonnay. So apart from Burgundy and Champagne, where else is Chardonnay widely planted and appreciated? Of course, the USA. Americans love Chardonnay. Um, I don't know. I will. My age is gonna show here, but I remember when I was younger and I would go to the store to buy soft drinks or toothpaste. I would go and say, "Do you have Colgate or meron kayong Coke?" For Americans for a long time. I think at the beginning of the early 90s when they thought about white wine, they thought Chardonnay, and it was a very specific style of Chardonnay also, very oaky, buttery, creamy. And I remember tasting it, thinking to myself, I don't like this. But as I got older, I actually got to appreciate it. So one thing with wine, by the way, guys, is that your tastes do change over time. So you have to keep it going back to the wines that you've tasted in the past, just to make sure that you give it a chance. In other words, so apart from France and the US, where else can you find it? In Italy, where they actually make it into sparkling wine. So in the north, you'll find it in Veneto, in Alto Adige. In the UK, where all grape varieties struggle to ripen, they are actually able to successfully plant Chardonnay and make it into sparkling wine. If you haven't done so, British traditional method sparkling wine is actually quite good as well. Try it. And of course, another new world producer, very well known for its big bold Chardonnays, would be Australia. But now there are also a lot of more restrained examples and expressions of this grape found in Adelaide Hills, in the Yarra Valley, and in Margaret River. And of course, one of the wines from today, which is actually one of the wines that Butz is bringing in through Gran Hacienda, is from Chile. So in Chile, you'll find Chardonnay as well. The example that I'll be sharing with you later is from the Itata Valley. Beautiful, beautiful, big wine. And then, of course, Argentina. A lot of people will always associate it with Malbec, right? But they actually also have Chardonnay in Argentina. And even Sauvignon Blanc country, New Zealand, actually has started planting Chardonnay and actually making white wines from Chardonnay. So, I mean, if you look at this list, you can understand, right, why Chardonnay is the most widely planted white grape variety. It's because it can grow anywhere, pretty much. And So we know na the parents of Chardonnay, where you can find, where it likes to hang out. Okay, how does it behave in the vineyards? By the way, this beautiful photo is actually given to us by Domaine Lavantero, which is the Petit Chablis or the Chablis producer that I will be talking about later on. And they only plant Chardonnay. So in Chablis, in France, if it's white wine, if it's white grape, it can only be Chardonnay and nothing else. So how does it behave in the vineyards? Why do farmers love it so much? Huh? It's an easy, low maintenance grape. It's like um, we like to hang out with people that are easy to be with. You know, Chardonnay is that kind of a grape. It can grow pretty much anywhere. It can adapt to climate and even to soil types. I mean, granted, it has an affinity for limestone and marl, but today I will be tasting a wine with you that was actually grown on volcanic soils, which is so different from limestone soils. So Chardonnay is one of those grape varieties. I remember there was a master of wine candidate who was asked to write a paper, and the question was, if all the grape varieties in the world were to be extinct and you could only save one to bring with you so that you can plant a vineyard when the world comes to an end, what would it be? Parang pang Miss Universe yung question, but the answer she gave was Chardonnay, because the truth is, if at some point you don't know where you're gonna be and where you're gonna have to replant your vines, Chardonnay is probably your best bet because it will grow and thrive, and you can make wine with it. Also, Chardonnay is a grape variety that has this fantastic ability to reflect terroir. So, guys, you are probably, I mean, I know like 75% of the room know wine, but if you don't know wine and you are not familiar with the term terroir, it actually just means a sense of place. It's actually like the confluence of everything that makes the grape grow. Climate is one, land, literally the soil that you plant it on. What aspect is it, on a plateau? Is it on a valley? Is it on a hill? And essentially, I would also define terroir as also including the human aspect of it all. The person who makes the decision in the vineyard, how to plant it, when to harvest it, what interventions to use, if any. So Chardonnay, because it's such an easy grape variety and it's very neutral. You can actually, if you practice long enough, have two glasses of Chardonnay from two very different places in the world, and just by sniffing it, you will know where it's from. It is that good in reflecting terroir. Like, you will know where it's from because it can absorb its environment and reflect it in the bottle. So that's why everybody loves Chardonnay. It's easy to take care of. Of course, nothing is perfect. What are the minor issues you'll have with Chardonnay in the vineyard? It can be quite vigorous. So kung merong mga plantita and plantito in this room, you know that when you plant something and it grows, and then all of a sudden, maraming leaves and weeds, your actual plant has to compete with the leaves and the weeds for nutrients. No? So if you actually are faced with this problem in the vineyard, if you were a grape grower, then you have to make sure that you do your regular pruning and canopy management. Kumbaga, gugupitin mo yung mga daan to make sure that all the nutrients from the soil is actually just absorbed by the grapes. What else? Sometimes Chardonnay can easily lose its acidity. So very important rin in the vineyard for the grape grower to know exactly when to harvest it. If you harvest it a day too late, chances are you'll end up with a wine that is flabby, lacking in acidity, and you don't want that because acidity is one of those things that actually gives your wine ageability. Regardless of grape variety, whether it's white or red, you want acidity in your fruit, okay? So that when you actually vinify it or turn it into wine, it can stay in that bottle. You can keep it for your daughter's 18th birthday, wedding, whatever. because it has the acidity to back it up, together with a lot of other factors. So acidity is very, very important when it comes to uh, the grape and um, harvesting it at the right time. So now we know Chardonnay and a little bit about how it behaves on the vine. Let's look at Chardonnay in the winery. When you actually, after you've harvested it, right? And you're actually ready to turn it into wine. By the way, the gentleman in this photo are the men behind the Petit Chablis that I will be tasting later on. And they do everything themselves. Everything is grown in the domain. They make the wine there. They bottle everything there. So they're very, very proud of their product. And as I said earlier, Chardonnay is the only grape they can plant because they are in Chablis after all. Why do winemakers love Chardonnay? Chardonnay is your ultimate blank slate grape variety. What does that mean? It can be made into many styles to please every type of wine drinker. I mean, when I know for a fact that I've met a lot of people who make wine because it has been handed down from generation to generation. It's something that they love to do, that they're passionate about, right? But at the end of the day, a winemaker needs to make money to be able to keep making wine. And if a winemaker wants to produce top quality Chardonnay that would require aging, right? And storage before it can be released, then it needs to be able to have the funds to produce that type of wine. And Chardonnay enables the winemaker to do just that because the winemaker can, yes, preserve the best of the fruit and make fantastic, top quality, premier cru Chardonnay, but at the same time also have wines that are meant for easy drinking, good value for money, wines that can be released the year, 2 years after harvest. Those are the money making wines. And Chardonnay is one of those grape varieties I said earlier that you can practically turn it into anything you want. Still white wine, which is probably 90% of what you see in the market, sparkling wine. Um, and Chardonnay is actually also susceptible to botrytis. So you can actually make sweet wines out of Chardonnay as well. They make some ice wines from Chardonnay. So, my gosh, if I were a winemaker, then for sure, I would want to have Chardonnay as part of my portfolio because I can pretty much offer any kind of wine to any type of wine drinker, right? But for the purposes of today, kasi nga Chardonnay two ways, I will talk about two very distinct styles of Chardonnay. Okay? Really, what is it? It's either oaked or unoaked. Okay. And if you guys are familiar with wine, then you will know that using oak to ferment or age or ferment and age wine imparts certain kinds of characteristics, aromas, and flavors to the wine. Because oak it allows oxygen to interact with the wine, but it keeps liquids in, right? And also it depends on the kind of oak. French oak will have a completely different effect on wine. American oak will have a completely different effect on wine. But the good thing about Chardonnay is that yes, it has an affinity for oak, which is not something you can see for a lot of white wines, but it can also make beautiful wines without using oak. And today I will be showing you side by side two very, very different examples of Chardonnay, one oaked and one unoaked. Okay. Well, and it's almost automatic that when Chardonnay is oaked, there will be some kind of conversion in the type of acidity in the wine. So if you are currently drinking a Chardonnay with you guys, and you just experiment, sniff your glass. If you smell something creamy, buttery or milky in your Chardonnay, chances are, number one, it was aged or fermented or both in oak, and that it has undergone what we call malolactic conversion. And this is where a little bit of science comes in. I'm not going to go in depth, but essentially, what malolactic conversion means is that the harsh malic acid that's usually found in wine is actually converted into a creamier acid that makes it more palatable, um, which is called lactic acid. It is a given that most wines that undergo oak fermentation and aging will have malolactic conversion, but sometimes some winemakers decide to add a different kind of bacteria. Um, it was described so grossly by Wine Folly. I don't know if you guys follow her, but she's funny. She said, this bacteria eats the malic acid and poops out lactic acid to give your wine a creamy and oily texture. So essentially, that is what happens. So another distinct style difference between an oak and an oak Chardonnay, generally speaking, is that one will have harsher, hindi naman harsh, sorry, will have a sharper, searing acidity versus the other one that will have a creamier, smoother, rounder mouthfeel. Not one is not better than the other, they're just very, very different in style. So those are the two things that you need to remember when you're buying Chardonnay, still white Chardonnay. You need to ask yourself, do I want a big, bold wine with a lot of these creamy characteristics? Or do I actually want wine that's just a little bit more on the lean, crisp, refreshing, fruity side? Those are the two very, very distinct styles of Chardonnay that I will be tasting today. And actually, those are the two styles that you will find out there in the market if you are shopping for Chardonnay. Again, very different wines. One wine is not necessarily better than the other. It's just all a matter of preference. Now, we've talked about parentage, environment, climate, soil type, whatever. But really, what I'm here to talk to you about today is how to tell if you're drinking Chardonnay without drinking Chardonnay just yet. And this comes with practice, guys. But you can actually sniff out Chardonnay from France and Chardonnay from California and Chardonnay from Chile if you train your nose. I mean, in wine school, we taste what 35 to 50 wines a day. But just as a cheat sheet, um, the very first thing I'll tell you about Chardonnay is that it is a non-aromatic, very neutral grape. What do I mean by that? If you are a wine nerd and you drink Riesling or Sauvignon Blanc, di ba yon, hindi mo pa inaamoy yung baso mo, alam mo na Sauvignon Blanc siya. It's very, like Sauvignon Blanc would have a lot of these gooseberry, asparagus, grassy characteristics. Riesling smells like white flowers and honey or green apple or petrol with age. But Chardonnay, you kind of need to dig a little deeper to know the aromas and the characteristics. It's not super obvious. So it's very, very neutral. And because it can grow in different climates, there's also a difference in the characteristics of the fruits, aromas that you will get. Because why? If it's cool, I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but for me, it's very practical. If it's very cold, you will not get very, very ripe fruit, right? What you'll get is fruit characteristic that's more crisp and refreshing and fresh. So if it's a cool climate Chardonnay like Chablis or Petit Chablis, you will have aromas and flavors of limes, lemons, green apple, and even stone or flint or something that's minerally. I know this is a very controversial term among people in the wine industry, but it's true. So if you are currently drinking Chablis or Petit Chablis or something from France without oak, stick your nose in that glass and chances are these are the aromas that you get. Okay? Now, if you are drinking a Chardonnay that is from a moderate climate, you go into a riper fruit territory. You go more stone fruit, cantaloupe, peach, golden apple. Examples of wines like this would be even in Burgundy alone, which is one wine-making region in France. There's a diversity in climate. I guess you could call it even microclimate. If you go down south, in a place called Mâconnais, where you will find a Chardonnay called Pouilly Fussé, it's not anymore lime, lemon, green apple that you smell in your glass. It's going to be a little bit more of these stone fruit characters. Now, interestingly, so yeah, if it's a warm climate Chardonnay, for example, Australia, South America, if you stick your nose in your glass, you will get South Africa then, you will get more tropical fruit aromas and characteristics. The riper fruit that reminds you of the sun. Okay? By the way, guys, what makes grapes ripen is not warmth, it's the sun. And so if you get a lot of sun, okay, the fruit ripens, right? High sugar, higher alcohol content, and you'll feel it in the glass, you'll smell it in the glass. And this is what you get with warm climate Chardonnay. So can you imagine one grape variety can be expressed in many, many, many different ways, just depending on where it's grown. You'll probably say, well, gee, that's true rin naman of other grape varieties. Yes, but I think with Chardonnay even more so. Very, very distinct difference depending on where you find it.
So
Um,
something like pineapple, like you get a pineapple.
yes. Sorry, who is this? What are you drinking? Where is it from?
Not just imagining all the Chardonnays I've smelled in the past. I'm using my memory.
Yeah. So chances are you probably have had a lot of warmer climate Chardonnay examples because really that's what you get. You get a lot of these I call them sunny fruits that you actually literally can smell the sun in your glass. But yes, you can get from one grape variety a wide range of aromas and flavor characteristics just because it was planted in a place that was either cooler or warmer, a little bit more moderate. So, I mean, there is just so much to talk about. Baka mamaya mag-overtime na ako. So, let's move. Now, those characteristics I talked about are all primary. When you say primary aromas and characteristics, those are aromas that come from the grape variety itself. Now, I want to talk about aromas that come as a result of the winemaking process. We call them in wine school secondary aromas, right? So, as I said earlier, we're trying to explore Chardonnay two ways. So, the first one is the more obvious one that I want to talk about. It's oaked Chardonnay. Okay. Oak Chardonnay, it means that you get your wine and you ferment it in a barrel. Okay? Your barrels are almost always going to be oak. And the winemaker can make a decision whether it's French oak or American oak. They say if it's French oak, because the grains of the wood is smaller, the flavor characteristics that they impart to the wine is a little bit more subtle. This is what they say. So you get more vanilla bean, less overt. But if they use American oak with bigger grains, then you get something that's a little bit more in your face. So you get coconut. Yeah. Um, and again, when wine is fermented or aged in oak, definitely, or aged in oak, because sorry, malolactic conversion always naman happens at the end of fermentation. So you will actually get a lot of these milky, buttery, cheesy aromas also. So if you are currently drinking an oak Chardonnay, uh, you will get one or more of these aromas. And probably there will be more aromas in there that I don't have on my slide just because there's so much. One bottle, one wine that I tried that had all of this is this. It's the Pandolfi Prize Los Patricia Chardonnay, which I will show you the difference of both wines in the glass in a bit. But just for comparison, this is what you get with an oak Chardonnay that has undergone malolactic conversion. Again, malolactic conversion. If you were in my classroom, I'll say, is what? It's the conversion of harsh malic acid in wine to something softer. So it's lactic acid. Now, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum is your unoaked Chardonnay without malo. It's just very pure expression of the grape variety. It doesn't mean that the wine is simpler or the wine is not as good. It is just what it is. It is the characteristic of an unoaked Chardonnay, specifically the one that I'm tasting today from Petit Chablis. It's just a lot of these refreshing citrus fruit characteristics, green apple, something very flinty. Um, None of the creaminess of the oak Chardonnay from Chile. This is wine that would go very well with oysters, with lightly cooked or even raw seafood. It's just very simple, pure expression of the fruit, which I find beautiful. I am more the unoaked Chardonnay kind of person, but over the years in wine, I've been in this industry for almost a decade now. I really, really also enjoy the other style. But again, guys, um, it's also very, very simple, but at the same time, there's something very, very beautiful about it. No, I was just telling Boots the other day, I tried both wines and I like them both for very different reasons. But the Petit Chablis, especially in this weather, I really enjoyed because it was so easy to drink. Very high acidity. Okay, very high acidity, but I like acid in my wine. So now, kanina pa pala kayo nagtitaste. So, parang late na to, but let's taste. And a lot of people always tell me in my tastings, why do you need to teach me how to taste, Chi? I know how to taste. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure you do. But if you want to taste wine like a professional, I will share some tips, okay? I know you guys have attended your fair share of tastings where you see people do this. They dip their glass, they swirl, they sniff, and then they take a sip, they gargle the wine. If they want to show off, they do a little bit of a reverse whistle. Diba? What is it that people are trying to do when they do that? They're actually activating all of their senses. It's a very, very good exercise to sharpen your senses, to prepare you for what you're about to enjoy. I always tell people, for me, tasting wine is also asking myself, is this wine delivering on its promise? If it gives me like this, no, I'm getting a lot of green apple, lime zest, lemon peel, very citrusy notes. If I drink this, will I get those things on the palate as well? Right? So tasting wine is not just drinking. There is a systematic approach to it so that later on, as you practice more and more and more, you'll find that you can actually tell what the wine is, even without reading the label. And also, you will know what not to look for, like, or what are the things that shouldn't be there. Because right now, if you smell your wine, you'll say you get aromas of this and that fruit. But smelling wine will also tell you if your wine is corked, if it has been oxidized, if you should send it back, etc. So enough chatting, Chi. Come on. So, guys, lift your glass, and I just want you to do me a favor and look at it. Obviously, this is white wine because we're all drinking Chardonnay, unless you're drinking red, right? But in wine school, we're also taught that it's not just color you're checking out when you look at wine. You're looking at clarity, you know, if there are bubbles in there, are there supposed to be bubbles in there? And if you ordered a glass of sparkling wine and it arrived to you and it has no bubbles, then there's something wrong with that. You can also tell age of wine by looking at it. Generally speaking, white wines when they're young, they're lighter. As they get older, they go deeper in color, right? So currently, my Petit Chablis, there is some age to this already now, but this is a 2015, correct? But it's still quite, I would say it's a pale lemon, but maybe a little bit more medium now. Because I've opened this bottle and it's clear. So now, guys, swirl your glass and then stick your nose in and tell me what you smell. is there any sense to what I said earlier that you actually get some fruit characteristics? Okay, 2018 Petit Chablis, you will still get the same notes, I think, and it would probably be also pale lemon. But if you are drinking or smelling Chardonnay right now from New World, Old World, Oak and Oak, please let us know what you're smelling. Okay. Um, this essentially tells you a little bit of what to expect from your wine, right? So as I said earlier, if it's cool climate, you get a lot of the citrus characteristics. If it's warm, you get more tropical fruit characteristics. That's what you're trying to figure out when you're smelling wine. And you're also trying to smell if there are any off aromas in there. And of course, the good part, which is sipping your wine and savoring it. And what exactly are you trying to determine when you're tasting wine? Number one, level of sugar. If it is devoid of any sweetness, that wine is dry. Okay. You're also trying to test level of acidity. Is it low, medium, or high? Tannin only applies to red wine. With white wine, no tannin because you get tannin from the skin of the grape. Alcohol. How high, how low, somewhere in the middle. You get that burning sensation at the back of your throat. It actually helps you determine the level of alcohol in your wine. Body, how heavy, how light, how does it feel on your tongue after you've swallowed it? That's body. And finally, length. I know a lot of people say, why do people say long, lingering finish? What does that mean? A lot of people think that finish only means what's the taste that's left in the mouth. Usually it's acid with wine or tannin. When you're trying to determine length, you're actually trying to determine what are the beautiful aromas and flavors of the wine that actually stay with you and how long do they stay with you, right? In wine school, we were given this código. If it's 5 seconds or less, it's short. Between 5 to 10 seconds, it's medium finish. Anything over and beyond 10 seconds, it's long. But essentially, this is what we're trying to do when we're tasting. We're determining color. Bata pa ba tong wine na to? If you see the bottle, it says 2020, then you pour a wine that looks orange and there's something wrong, right? It just basically teaches you or lets you know before you even taste the wine what to expect from it. So I am going to now show you the two ways. Kanina puro Chardonnay tayo. Ano ba yung, I remember some of my wine colleagues here were saying, Chardonnay two ways. Ito yung Chardonnay two ways. First, let's talk about the producers, okay? And Boots, please feel free to add whatever if I miss out on anything. So these two, just looking at the picture alone, okay, you'll know the difference. There is a very, very big difference between these two wineries. One on the left, as I told you, is the main Roland Lacantereau, which is from Petit Chablis. Very, very typical Petit Chablis, unoaked. They make that, but they also have Chablis in their portfolio. A little bit more premium. But this Petit Chablis I'm drinking apparently is their entry level wine, and my gosh, it's so good. Okay, the one on the right, that is the Pandolfi Price family. Okay, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. So the guys on the left, their father actually went to wine school in Burgundy, in Beaune. The guys on the right, Enzo Pandolfi is a doctor. He and his wife found out about this vineyard that was for sale in a newspaper ad. They are not shy to admit this. They said, we have farming backgrounds and we know that this particular site is a very good site for grapes. So they bought the vineyard. But you know what they were doing? They were actually selling grapes to winemakers around them. They knew they had excellent fruit that would make excellent wine. But that's what they did in the beginning, okay? Whereas the other side of the family, since the 70s, have been making Chablis, okay? However, the Pandolfi Price guys, they only started actually their first vintage later on. Not in the 70s, not even in the 80s, but in 2008. That was when they came out with their first wines. And boy, guys, for people who have no wine background, admittedly so, their wines are critically acclaimed. Okay. So guys, if you haven't yet tried the Pandolfi Price line, they have everything. They have, anyway, basta, ito na naman ako. So, Currently, Domaine Lavantero is being headed by the sons. So Arno and David are now doing winemaking, grape growing, sales, and marketing. I think their dad has retired or is a little less active, right? On the other side, the son of Enzo the doctor is also named Enzo, is also now super hands-on with Pandolfi Price. So he's involved in making the wine. He's also involved in the vineyards. And actually, Pandolfi Price, because they in the beginning they had no experience with winemaking, they consulted a renowned Chilean winemaker, C. Francois. And he actually helped them create some of the finest examples of Chardonnay from Chile that you'll ever find. Style-wise, the Petit Chablis guys, they produce crisp, lively wines from Chardonnay, very true to the character of Burgundy. Their Petit Chablis has not seen oak at all. The other Chablis in their portfolio are all fermented in stainless steel but have been aged in used French barriques, meaning even if it is aged in oak, it's not new oak. So it doesn't really make that much of a flavor difference. They really remain true to the characteristic, the purity of the grape variety itself. On the other hand, we're just talking about Chardonnay, okay? The Pandolfi Price Vineyard produces Burgundian style Chardonnay, both oak and an oak. So they do have like a Chablis style, their Larkin series, I think. But the one that I'm tasting today with you guys is their oak Chardonnay that can actually rival some of the most expensive oak Chardonnays you'll find in Burgundy. Like, I don't know if it was Wine Spectator or Wine Advocate, but you can correct me, that said it could rival like Pouligny Morachet, but at the fraction of a price. You know, so really fantastic quality Chardonnay from guys who didn't know anything about wine in the beginning, but are now like producing fantastic wines from the Itata Valley. Itata Valley is actually the oldest, I think, winemaking region in Chile. What else? Both have expanded their vineyards. Whereas the Domaine Lavantero has of course stuck with Chardonnay because that is the only thing that's legally allowed to be planted there. And that's probably what they're going to be doing a lot of many, many years to come. In Chile, they are now planting Syrah, Pinot Noir, Sauvignon Blanc, and Riesling. So two very, very different winemakers, two very different winemaking skills, but two fantastic wines. Okay? Now, ito na talaga si Two Ways. These are the bottles, guys. In case you're wondering, after this, you should contact Gran Hacienda because if you want to experience what I'm talking about, both are 100% Chardonnay. 100% Chardonnay. No difference in grape variety. Even the average age of the vines are the same. Petit Chablis, I think 25 to 30 years old on the average. Pandolfi Price, very specific, or at least that's what I saw. It's like 29 years old.
Can you check if the bottle is 2015? Parang 2018 ata yan. Can you just check?
So what I have is 2018.
Okay.
There's a 2-year difference between the two Chardonnays that I have. I'm so excited to show you the color difference. Sorry, excited ako, nagpo-pour. Okay. Soil. Okay. Petit Chablis grown on Portlandian clay with limestone. Okay. Soil for Chile, volcanic. With ash. Okay. So, I mean, yan pa lang. You can already expect very, very big difference in terms of the fruit itself. Iba yung pinagkalakihan eh, di ba? Parang sa atin, kung ikaw lumaki ka sa probinsya, ikaw lumaki ka sa Manila, ibang-iba ka. Pareho kayong tao, pwedeng pareho kayo ng pareho kayo ng families, pero magkaiba kayo ng pinagkalakihan. So very, very different expression. This is the biggie. Petit Chablis unoaked completely. Zero exposure to oak. Pandolfi Price Los Patricio Chardonnay. Barrel fermented for 22 months. Okay? French oak. Cool climate. So you get a lot of those, as I said earlier, refreshing, crisp, citrusy, very, very high acidity, lean, zingy Chardonnay. While, tignan nyo naman yung climate sa Chile. Mediterranean with a lot of humidity. Of course, the sites where they plant their Chardonnay is actually on a slope, a steep slope. So there is lower temperature as a result of altitude. Kasi di ba pag mas mataas, mas malamig. But there's also the moderating influence of the river. What the river does is that it just moderates the temperature difference or the diurnal range or the temperature difference between night and day. But it also makes for a more humid vineyard. Okay. So just looking at, without even tasting it, just looking at these things, you know that these are going to be very, very different wines. Okay.
So the Los Patricios was new oak, used oak, or
New, correct? And barrique. So barrique style. So smaller. The smaller surface area, it imparts an even more pronounced aroma to the wine. Kasi mas
So new French oak, yung Los Patricios.
That's correct.
What about the Larcon?
Larcon Boots.
That's an oak naman. And an oak Chardonnay. The Larcon Chardonnay is an oak.
Yeah.
So very similar to the style of Petit Chablis. 100% stainless steel lang.
Walang oak at all. So guys, this is my Petit Chablis. You see? It's still pale lemon. This is the Patricios. Look at that. It's golden lemon. Okay. I even use different glasses. The Los Patricios is a big, powerful wine. I'm actually using an 1855. This is meant for your bold, big reds, and I'm using it for my Chardonnay. Just by looking at it, you know that they are two very different wines, even if it's the same grape. Swirl and sniff, guys. But back me up on this. It's really lemon. That's what you get. Lemon, lime zest, crushed rocks. Someone actually said to me, "Chi, how do you smell? How do you know what crushed rocks smell like?" You know, in wine school they actually make us lick rocks and and that's what you get. This wine it smells like lemon peel, lime, a little bit of green apple, some white flowers also, but really just fresh. There is nothing candied, cooked in it. There is nothing oaky because there is no oak at all. Now, if you guys have this, I know some people have the Los Patricios. Okay, guys. This wine, for me, and Butts asked me this, did you get any fruit? I get the smell of, you know, apples. You cut them, you leave them on a plate, and then they get turned brown. It's that smell. There's like oxidized apples, but I also get ripe pineapple. Sorry, no, may pagka, my memory of pineapple, because in my household when I was a kid, was a lot of these Dole canned pineapples. That's what I smell in this glass. And I get definitely a certain creaminess. Probably not milk, but maybe something that's a little tart, maybe a little yogurt, and definitely some smoke. It smells and like toasted hazelnuts, like that. So on the nose alone, you can already tell that this is one complex wine. Okay, there are just so many layers of aromas that, okay, so as I said earlier, when you're tasting, you're preparing your palate, right, for what to expect. So grabe to. Sobra yung promise ng wine na to, just on the nose. Okay, wala pa akong natataste, but I expect a lot from this wine, just based on what I'm smelling in the glass. Okay, so by the way, guys, if you have wines like this, you have one an oak, light, crisp, refreshing, and you have one that's very bold and powerful, you start off by drinking the lighter bodied wine. Okay, because you don't want that to be killed by your bold wine, your oaky, flavorful wine. So you start off with the leaner, the more how do you say it? The more uh, elegant, the smaller one, the finer one. So do me a favor. I know you guys have been drinking kanina pa, but I'm just about to do this now. I'm actually going to take a mouthful of the wine, and what I do, because I want the wine to hit all parts of my tongue. Because your taste receptors are placed on different areas in your tongue. You get sweetness on the tip, acidity on the side, bitterness at the back. So if you just swallow, you just get bitterness. So allow the wine to coat your tongue. Okay. And if you want, you can do that fancy with reverse whistle, which is essentially you smelling what's inside your mouth before you swallow it. Okay. Mm. Okay. So dry. Okay. No sugar at all. Very high acid. I don't know. What do you get that? High acid. It's the type that makes your mouth pucker. Okay. High acidity. Remember, there's no mallow in this wine. But I do know that they also allow this wine to rest on lees a little bit. So it's high acid, but there's a little softness to it, but not like creamy acidity. It's really full on acidity from the grape. Alcohol, this is 12.5%, guys. Okay, so again, cool climate, when you don't get as much sun, your grapes will ripen, but only to a certain extent, to a certain degree. So you don't have a lot of sugars in there, and therefore there is not a lot of sugar for the yeast to consume to turn into alcohol. So this is like 12.5% medium alcohol. Body, it's not light. Definitely, this wine has presence, but it's also not bold and big. So it's somewhere in the middle. Finish, I wrote medium. This was when I initially tasted it, but actually it's lingering on my palate. I've been talking. I'm sure it's more than 10 seconds, and I still get it. All of the pleasurable flavors from the wine. I still get the acidity. I still get the freshness of the citrus fruit. So I'd say medium plus finish. Just a really enjoyable wine. Wine that you would drink when it's probably hot outside and you're having pika pika. Like I would, Butch and I, we posted a photo. Usually with Chablis, you do a lot of your raw or gently cooked seafood. Good with that, okay? Because it's a gentle enough wine that it will not kill the delicate flavors of sushi and sashimi. You know, you don't drink a big bold wine with food that's very light in flavor because you want to be able to enjoy both. Anyway, I'll talk about food and wine pairing in a little bit. But so did this wine deliver on the palate what it promised on the nose? Definitely. Okay. Now I want to go to the other Chardonnay. Um, if you have it with you, please try to do the same thing with what I did with the Petit Chablis. Siyempre nilunok ko agad, hindi na ako nag-gargle. Masarap siya. Okay. So this is dry, definitely. Acidity, it's there. But because it is softer, it gives the impression of a more medium kind of acid. Okay. It's not harsh. It's not the type that would make your face go, ganon. it's it's a richer, rounder acidity, if you know what I mean. This is the difference. Alcohol, and I feel it now, it's hot. It's 14.5%, guys. That's because warmer climate, riper fruit, therefore more sugar. So the yeast had more sugar to eat to convert into alcohol, therefore higher alcohol. So 12.5, 14.5, super high acidity, ito medium acidity, and body. Boy, this wine is a wine that's really begging to be noticed. You cannot ignore this wine. This is a full bodied wine. It is a wine that will probably require food to be fully enjoyed. But to be honest, I'm drinking it now. I like it. But that's me. And the finish is long. I get I get tropical fruit, I get toast, I get smoke, I get hazelnuts, which I didn't get on the nose, but on the palate I get it. And the finish is just beautiful. It's long, lingering, and lovely. It's a very good wine. And when I found out how much it was, I'm like, talaga? Kasi if you buy Burgundy, that's not even Grand Cru from just your village level. It's going to be more than that. But this wine, I was so impressed. So if you are actually looking into trying out something different, I suggest you try this. There was one wine writer who said it's a difficult wine to get, but once you get it, boy, you're in for a pleasant experience. Um, if you ask me which do I like better, they are two very different. It's like comparing apples to oranges. I can't say this one is better than the other. It's really all a matter of preference. With wine, as as in life, it's all subjective. And price points are not also that far apart, but both wines will give you a very, very different experience of Chardonnay. And I guess people will ask me or Boots, or actually we have a lot of sommeliers in this call, which I'm sure can give you better food and wine pairing suggestions. But really, when you say, so what do I eat with Chardonnay, Chi? You can't just generalize Chardonnay as one kind of wine, obviously, based from tonight's experience. When you ask what do I eat with Chardonnay, first you have to ask what kind of Chardonnay am I drinking? Am I drinking a lean, crisp, refreshing, light Chardonnay? Then definitely do not overpower it with foods that are very, very rich. Okay, nothing creamy, of course. Again, this beautiful photo, this is given to me by Butch, but it's really good with sushi. Gently prepared, uncooked raw seafood, always good. Taste. Sorry, nagbabasa ko bigla ng comments. Somebody said tasting coconut for sure. So with your petit chablis, for example, or any unoaked Chardonnay example, yes, go for your seafood dishes. Smoked salmon also, I think it's a good combination. But if you have an oaky Chardonnay that has a little bit of age and therefore can stand up to food that is a little bit more flavorful, guys, go to town and get yourself a nice creamy pasta. You know what? I would actually say, and I don't know if sommeliers in this room would probably say, what are you talking about? I would actually drink this with steak with béarnaise sauce. Just because I think it is big enough, this wine can definitely stand up to anything creamy and bold and flavorful. So at the end of the day, you decide what you want to drink and you decide what to eat with whatever it is that you're drinking. But I will always tell you guys, with wine, you always have to compare. You can't generalize if you don't like something just because you tasted one sample that didn't really work for you. And this today is, I think, evidence enough that you could say, I don't like Chardonnay. Diba? I know a lot of people who say anything but Chardonnay. But now you know that you can't say that you don't like Chardonnay. It's like saying I don't like chicken. There are many, you might be sick of fried chicken, but there are many ways that chicken is prepared that you can enjoy. So I hope oh, okay, I'm just in time.
There's a style of there's a style of Chardonnay. It's called Pouilly-Fuissé.
Yes, Pouilly-Fuissé.
What would it be? Would it be more like the Chablis style, or would it be like
It is going to be so. Pouilly-Fuissé is from a place in Burgundy called Mâconnais, which is actually towards the south. It's a little bit warmer. It's going to be in terms of flavor characteristics, you will probably have less of the lemons and the lime peels, and you will have a little bit more of the stone fruit characteristics. And they also use oak. Probably not like brand new oak, but they do use oak in aging the wines. Pouilly-Fuissé is a little bit richer. It's not as it's not as nervous a wine as Chablis. Okay, that's one word that I would use for the wines of Chablis and Petit Chablis. There is a certain tension to it. It's very highly strung. Okay, the Puy Fusé from the Macon, it's a little softer. It's not going to be oaky. It's not like Pulinimo, Rocher, or these examples from Chile or California. It's going to be somewhere in the middle.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And actually, it's time for questions. So if you have questions, violent reactions, comments, if you actually have a story about Chardonnay to share, please feel free. Now is the time to ask.
Chi, I'll add lang, no?
Go
The
ahead.
reason why we, in our portfolio, we have a couple of Chardonnays, but these two are a very good example of the specific style, no? Two ways. As mentioned by Don, generally on a cooler climate, you'll get lemon lime talaga. That's what the profile that you'll get. Then on a warmer area, Mediterranean, you'll likely get orchard fruits, pineapple, apple, along those lines. So those are the two key points now when tasting. And as she said, there's no preference talaga on what I personally like among the two. No? It just really depends on the situation or the food, at that particular time.
Yeah. And actually, this is true not just of Chardonnay, but of any wine. No, I think his portfolio actually represents a wide range of wines, different styles, because I think it's always good to have something for everybody. There's hang on a second. What does it mean when label states lightly oaked? Actually, go ahead and answer that if you want to.
Well, lightly oak is basically when they use a certain vessel. Normally, it's a bigger vessel, which imparts a lightly oak flavor. So instead of the smaller one, which is about 225 liters, you use a Foudre, which is about 500, bigger vessel. So that way it imparts oak flavor, but on a light manner. No?
Does that mean, sorry, I don't want to type na kasi duling na ako. That means the oak is infused less, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Kasi mas malapad yung surface, diba? So
Correct. It's not the time that it's in there, but
no
volume. Okay, got it.
Can you elaborate on what white flowers mean? Actually, that's a good question. There are certain floral notes you'll find in wine that are so obviously like violets, right? Or like acacia flowers. White flowers is that it's a scent that is not defined, but you do know that it is a floral note because it doesn't fall into any of the fruit or the herb characteristics of wine. I would say sometimes there are wines that actually smell like jasmine, but in this case you don't know what it is. It is floral, definitely, but it is not musky floral, nor is it rose red floral, but it's something that's a little bit more delicate. And me personally, that's what I mean when I say white flowers, like a blossom of some sort, but not overtly floral. It doesn't fall into fruit, doesn't also fall into herbs or spices. It's in the floral category.
See, I just like to share something because I grew up in Switzerland. So at that time, the best wines still came from France. The wines at that time from Spain and Italy weren't that great of a quality, generally speaking. What I like to say about the Chablis is that, to my opinion, because they create such great wines in such a cold climate, despite the grape to be so neutral compared to Riesling Sylvaner, or a Tokay or a Gewürztraminer, I think that's exactly what makes those wines so special, to my opinion.
I agree with you. I think with Chardonnay and Chablis specifically, you really appreciate the purity of the fruit because it's not anything that will overwhelm you with aromas, right? Or anything overt or anything too obvious. There is a certain
Yes.
elegance and a certain restraint in Chablis that is difficult to find anywhere else. In fact, in wine school, when people smell Chablis, they know it's Chablis. It's something very distinct, very elegant, very subtle about it.
Very elegant. Because the Riesling, by the mere definition, it has its own aroma and flavor profile. Even in years that might not be the best years or more challenging years with regards to the weather and everything, with a little bit of mixing and you can get okay. But in the Chablis, I think that the winemakers in the Chablis really have perfected with that Chardonnay grape, what you can say that that the very nature of the grape is really expressed in its elegance.
Agree. I love Chablis. I mean, personally, uh, in fact, Butts knows this. My exposure to wine is really more French, more old world. But again, as I said earlier, as I get older, I've learned to appreciate anything and everything that's out there. There is nothing I will not drink. Um, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think that's also just the result of me being exposed to so many different wines. It's like when you say I only drink Bordeaux, kawawa ka naman, di ba? Because there's so much of wine to enjoy, right? So yeah. Anybody else, please feel free to share. It's nice to hear from people.
Hi, Chi.
Hello.
I wanted to ask, I always see white wine decanters or aerators beside red wine aerators or decanters. Um, how would you know if a white wine is something that you need to decant, or what would be the characteristics of the white wine for it to be a wine that has to be decanted?
I think personally, siguro I
Yeah.
don't have enough old white wines to. But the thing with
I
white
don't decant kasi my white wines, but then I do for especially the oak wines, I do have it open up a bit before I consume the bottle. So I
yeah,
want to get advice.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't decant white wines precisely because I find that if you decant white wine, it's a very fragile type of wine style, right? If it is oak, if it has a little bit more character, if it has enough structure to support it, and it's a little older, meaning it's been in the bottle for so long that you actually need to give it time with oxygen, then I go ahead and decant your white wine. But personally, if I don't decant my white wine, but if I were given like maybe an older Huyuni Morashe, for example, that could actually just need more space and more air to fully express itself, then I would do it. But with young whites, I wouldn't, because the
Yeah.
reason why you drink young white wine is because you want to enjoy its youth. But when you decant, you're actually advancing the aging process because you're actually you're actually
Oxygen.
literally
Yeah.
allowing oxygen to come into contact with it. So yeah, I would only decant it if it had some age to it and it had enough structure to support it. Otherwise, I wouldn't. There are many other experts in this group. Come on, you guys, answer.
I just wanted to get your opinion because yeah, I do see a lot of the white wine aerators in the market. So I wanted to know. I've never used it personally. I'm on the same boat as you. I don't aerate my white wines. So
Yeah, I don't know. What's
thank you.
you guys erase or decant your whites? Any other questions, suggestions, comments, stories? Wala na ba? I think I talked too much. Sorry, I have that tendency to do it. I love talking about wine. I could talk about wine forever. Ano to, with the forest fire, what do you think is the effect to this characteristic Californian Chardonnay? Number one, I think it would affect the harvest. I mean, were they even able to salvage anything, diba, in the vineyards?
Yeah, we have some wineries that canceled the vintage.
Yeah. So it would be that. I mean, kasi it's a forest fire. You know, if it were like a climactic problem or temperature problem, sometimes the more challenging the vintage, the better it is for the grapes that do survive, right? Because with wine, actually, or with grapes that are planted to make wine, the more hardship they go through, the better they taste. It's like people, you know, when your life is easy the whole time, you grow up and the smallest thing, you give up. But with grapes that are made for wine, the more you starve them for nutrients, the better quality they have. So, but with fire, kasi it's very difficult. Like, you don't even know if those vines are still viable. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a way to salvage that, but kawawa naman sila.
Yeah, I agree, no. On the forest fires in California, especially in Napa Valley area, sa Sonoma County, I've seen a video recently na once the vines are burned out, it won't ever used again. It can't ever be used again. So, I think yung taste, it won't really be affected kasi some people think na when vineyards are exposed to forest fires, it will have that smoky aroma on their wines, but it won't really have any effect on that. It's really more on the production that they get. So once the vines are burned out, it can never be used again. So some vineyards recently na affected, half of their vineyards are burnt out, so they can never use those again. What they can do is really just plant vines again and wait for 20, 15 more years para, they get good quality grapes.
Okay. I think number one, I think that's so sad because imagine, I mean, that's it. That's it for those. And there are old vines in California, right? It's just so sad that they'll never be able to use those again. Which is actually funny because the next question here that I have is, hi Chi, what's your opinion on vine age? I don't know. I'm sure you've seen bottles that says from old vines, diba? I honestly, it depends. They say that the older the vine, the less productive it is, and so the grapes that do survive actually have richer flavor concentration. That there are wines that are like that, but then sometimes the older the vine, the less productive it becomes, and then it just really dies a natural death, and they need to replant. So I don't. I mean, I don't think there is any one way to go about it. But my impression is that if it says old vines, it is probably more playing on the history behind it more than anything else. I don't think diba, it's not a regulated wine term also. But I don't know if you guys have any opinion about that. I mean, all the other wine people in this room. It said also, Boots, this is good. It might be interesting for you to let us know which wines you're going to taste next week. Yes, we will be. If you have registered, I'm sure Boots will send you the list, no? For the next class. Any opinion on old vines or vine age in general?
So last na Chi, on old vines, I think it's really more on the quality level kasi the older the vines, the deeper the roots you have. And the deeper the roots are, the more stuff that you actually absorb from the soil. So it's really more on quality that you're getting on old vines.
But yeah. Thank you. That's Ian, by the way. Ian is our sommelier friend. I'm sure some of you guys here know him. With the threat of frost in Chablis, do you think the price of 2021 vintage will increase? I think when there is less wine to go around and you need to make profit, it will definitely affect the price. But also, the question now is who will buy, diba? I think right now it's a struggle. The industry is struggling, I think, and definitely when there is an effect in the vintage where you actually are only able to harvest a portion of what you were expecting to, then definitely somebody will have to take the hit for that, you know. But I don't know. Probably going to be more expensive, but they need to be able to justify the price, diba? As I said, when the vintage is difficult, it was a difficult year. Sometimes the grapes are better. You actually get more flavor concentration because of the smaller yield. Then maybe it can command a higher price. But I don't know.
If you could give one piece of advice to yourself when you knew nothing about wine at all, in order to really start off on a good start, what do you think that would be?
WSET for me. I am a product of that school, of that curriculum. So WSET is Wine and Spirit Education Trust. I started my wine career late in life. And at that time, I wanted to know that I was good enough to do it. And the only way to know that is to actually submit yourself to testing, blind tasting, and examination, and rigorous practice of tasting, studying. It's not easy. A lot of people think, oh, madali, ang sarap naman ang trabaho mo. You're just drinking wine all the time. But really, studying wine is not easy. But if you actually want to get into it, for me, WSET opened the doors. It prepared me for a career in wine education because that is the track that I want. But if you were, for example, wanting to enter, to want to be a sommelier, then there's also the Court of Master Sommelier. There's a Society of Wine Educators also, which is the American counterpart of WSET. There are so many courses that you can take to actually get certified in wine. But I am a WSET baby, so that is what that is what I'm peddling. But yeah, get yourself certified, and that's the first step, I think. Right? Am I right, guys? Another question. Best Pinoy food or dish to pair with Chardonnay? High acid, crispy pata. No. I mean, I always treat wine as a condiment or a sausawan or a sauce. Whenever I pair it with food, I always think, how can this wine bring out the best in my food? And how can this food bring out the best in wine? That's why in the restaurant business, diba, we're always sad when we can't sell wine to customers because both are supposed to enhance the experience. So with the Chardonnay that we had today, definitely a lot of seafood, a lot of oysters. Yeah. Sige, and crispy pata na rin, Patrick. Pwede din. Basta high acid, you can do crispy pata.
See, I guess in closing, in summary for the today's topic, no, Chardonnay two ways. Before we again we like to keep it within the 1 hour no time limit.
Okay, go.
But no problem. But in general, Chi, baka just to recap on the discussion that we had.
Okay, so Chardonnay two ways essentially is Chardonnay as a grape variety can be expressed differently. And tonight we showed you two very, very distinct examples. Oaked and an oak Chardonnay, New World and Old World examples. And so I would really, really encourage all of you after tonight to go out there and try both in order to make an informed decision. Really, this All Things Wine School was conceptualized because we wanted to help regular Pinoys to make better wine choices, because now is the time that we're drinking wine and enhancing our experiences at home more than ever because we have nowhere else to go. So give yourselves a chance by trying something that you've never tried before. For me, that is how I would summarize today's discussion. Understand the grape and then go out there and try something that you've never tried before wine-wise, and you'd just be pleasantly surprised. That's it. Butts, anything else?
Yeah, no, that's it. Thank you, Chi. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hope to see you guys next week again, Thursday, 5 p.m. We're doing Grenache or Garnacha. So we're doing a Côte d'Oron versus a Spanish garnacha, no? So another interesting topic for sure. So
Uh,
hope to.
Yeah, and sorry, I just somebody said, what? Where can you buy the two wines you shared? Gran Hacienda. You can email the same email that you sent your registration to. And Boots will happily help you with your wine choices. So class is dismissed. I'll see you guys next week. Looking forward to it. I hope you guys had fun and learned something. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chi. Thanks, Boots.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Archie.
Thanks, Miss Chi. Thanks, Boots.
Bye.
Bye.